Hi, this is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology. My name is Stephen, and this is episode 28. So what are we going to be looking at? Again, we're going to look at price charts for the markets that I follow most closely, including some extra cryptocurrencies. And then we've got a lot going on in the world right now. We're going to get an update on the US chart and Pluto's transit, which is taking place now through the next year and a half. Briefly, I'm going to look at China's chart, in particular its progress chart, and then just also briefly look at what I regard are increasing incidences of censorship in the media. And today's date is February 8th. 2020. So let's just get right into it. This is the Dow Jones. This is the close on Friday, the 7th. We came back down to this trend line. So we had a bounce, which I regard as central banks all over the place working together to pump money into the system, to keep confidence up in the face of sketchy economic conditions and threats of pandemic and so forth. And so they jumped in with both feet, bought stocks, this is my opinion, and boosted the market up primarily to maintain confidence. So what's the astrology here? Just as a review, I combine the astrology with traditional technical analysis, and in this chart you can see the blue lines are support and resistance areas. I have trend lines drawn in here. A very clear channel has been formed in this market. I'm using an ETF as a proxy for the Dow Jones. This is the ETF DIA. It's a long story why I do that, but trust me, it'll work here. And then down below we have RSI, momentum indicators, and the MACD indicator. And neither one is, especially overbought, but what's going on here in technical analysis is clearly we have a divergence where if I drew a line, if I can draw a line really quickly here for you. Let's see, why isn't this working? Here we go. Oh, maybe I have to hold it. If I draw a line right here, okay, you see that happening. But if we draw a line up here, the market action is not matching the downward trend in the momentum indicators. The momentum indicators need to, the price action needs to continue going up in order for the momentum indicators to catch up, or they're telling us that this is a false rally. And this can last a while, but that's just one thing that happens in technical analysis. So anyway, getting back to my combining technical analysis with the astrology, all the vertical lines are dates that I think significant things could be happening. And I have to qualify that because every week or every episode I say that these markets are very manipulated, particularly the Dow Jones indexes and gold. Okay, but let's look at this. So Friday was an important date. And in the astrology, typically, historically, what's going on astrologically relative to the markets, this date in the Dow Jones Industrials could very well indicate a reversal. We're going to see if that is, confirmed, over the next few days, actually, because we drop underneath this trend line, we could have, could just tell a lot of technical traders that this rally was, sort of a bogus rally. And in the astrology, we do not have a lot of strong astrological dates coming up. We have something on, let's see, let me get rid of this here. We do have something just coming up in a few days, maybe on the 12th. We could again have some manipulation going on, but we have to go all the way out to the 27th before the next, sort of sizable bullish day will take place. So in general, what I'm saying here is that we had a potential reversal date on Friday. Let's see how the price market action goes. I think all this is manipulation to maintain confidence when we do not have a lot of bullish astrology happening over the next several weeks. And I have to look out, way into March before something notable is taking place. So let's move on here. I've got a lot going on in this episode. Okay, here's gold. Again, blue lines, support, resistance. We broke through resistance level. We've back tested it, which is very typical. It's a regular occurrence to back test a resistance level. And now we're bouncing. We are not oversold. And I think, let me catch my breath, and I have to shuffle through some notes here to see what's going on. And we have a number of days that should be pretty bullish coming up. Unfortunately, one of those dates is a Saturday, so that, one of these dates is a Saturday, but we may, just like we had back here on that particular December 16th was a Sunday, but it carried over and we had this big rally happen. We could pick up the energy, the day before on the 14th, and it could carry over, into the 17th. So let's see what happens there. But then on March 1st in particular, I have it indicated out here. And I think March 1st is, let's see if I can find it really quickly. I think March 1st might actually be a Sunday again. I didn't double check. But Sundays we have the futures market. So if astrology is happening on a Sunday, oftentimes just like I just mentioned back on the December 16th, it's in play and it's going to affect the market. This is a very strong bullish date, March 1st and 2nd, okay? So note that down. We are coming to the end of a seasonal period that, in a very general sense, we're coming to the end of a very bullish seasonal period, and usually we trade sideways to a little down afterwards. But we have so much other things going on in the world with the coronavirus, with the market, I think, hitting all-time highs and then looking weak in my estimation. So we'll just have to see how this plays out. The seasonals may not affect the market as much this year, okay? But always play the technicals along with the astrology. That's my recommendation. So let's move on. Silver. Okay, silver's lagging behind gold somewhat. We're kind of fading in our rally a little bit. However, the next couple weeks in silver have a lot of strong astrology taking place, even starting this Monday, and that is this particular line right here. This should be a strong reversal date, and just see how it goes. We have to get through this trend line right there, and we are still above the 50-day moving average. So we're still definitely in rally mode. We're above the 50. We have some strong support underneath our price action, and we have several dates coming up that are historically bullish indicators, from the perspective of astrology. So we are not, we're getting almost a little bit oversold down here. So I'm positive on this market. Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin had an interesting week. It broke through this resistance level. I wouldn't be surprised if we backtest, but the thing is that we have a lot of cryptos
heading higher, and they're actually outpacing Bitcoin. So let's look at the astrology here. I wouldn't mind us having a back test, but what's going on in the astrology is actually tomorrow, the 8th, today's the 8th. Okay, today we should have, in fact, I just checked prices, and we have, particularly in Ethereum and some of the alt markets, they are rallying. And so today is a bullish day, and these next couple of dates, which are the 14th and February 18th and 19th, again, February 14th, February 18th, 19th, all these are bullish days, and coming all the way out to March 7th. This market is getting, particularly in the RSI, it's getting, up there in the overbought territory. But the astrology is very strong out here. So the key thing just with Bitcoin is if we can stay above this, this level, which was support here, then it became resistance, a little bit of resistance, and then we broke through, and we have very positive energy over the next month. Okay. US dollar. Okay. Well, when you print a lot of money over time, that should affect the value of the dollar. So this rally here, I think, is more related to people, possibly just insiders, who are kind of going to looking at the dollar as a place just to sit out and watch what happens in the markets in general. And actually, we have some continuation in bullish energy just this next week in the dollar. And then we may hit the skids more like look at February 19th. And we have reversal energy coming up on February 25th and maybe March 2nd, which are these out here. Again, this week we may see some continuation in the rally, okay, on the 11th and 12th, and then some hesitation. And that is aligning itself well with this particular trend line because, the technical traders, if we get through this trend line, they're going to buy it. But if it starts bouncing on this trend line, they may think, this is at least an area for a pause, and then the energy starts going more negative for the dollar as we, over the next month or so. So watch the trend lines, watch the support and resistance areas, but the energy is starting to wane in the US dollar. Okay, I put in here a couple price charts for cryptos because just what's going on here. Today's action, this was February 7th's chart, and this is today's Saturday, the 8th. On Saturday, we have broken through this resistance level in Ethereum, okay? And we've already almost, what do we come from? We've almost doubled we're up 100% in Ethereum right now, and we've broken through a resistance area. In addition, I've looked at some dates that are coming up. So this is more, I've studied Bitcoin much more, but you might want to mark these dates down, see if the astrology holds up. But on the 14th and 25th, I think we have further bullish energy, approaching. We are getting definitely overbought in the RSI. We're due for some sort of pullback. But when it comes to momentum indicators, some of these last longer than you think that they will. Eventually, we're going to get a pullback, but the market could be much higher, particularly if we can hold above this level. So big rally mode in Ethereum. The astrology is positive for it to continue. EOS is virtually the same thing, okay? We have some positive dates out here, the 12th of February, 24th, March 7th, okay? And today, when I looked at the price chart, we are through this resistance zone, at least at the moment. So again, the alts are really taking off. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is the astrology of the U.S. in this inner ring right here. This is the time that I use, and here is yesterday's transits, where the planets are in the sky right now. And if you've listened to my previous podcasts, we've kind of gone through some very challenging astrology, and you just have to read the news, impeachments and viruses and distortions on reporting when it comes to economic situation and so forth and so on. But for the next year and a half, we are going to be continuing to have, as a nation, this Pluto transit to our natal Mercury. So here's Mercury right here. Here's Pluto right here. And I can even draw you a little line if you want a little line here. And so it's just, that's it right there. Okay. And Pluto's going to move back and forth. It's approaching an exact opposition. It's exact right now enough. And Saturn just passed this opposition just recently within the last month. Pluto moves more slowly than Saturn. The Pluto transit to Mercury is going to continue for the next year and a half, okay? And what does this mean? Well, these symbols, these energies can manifest in a lot of different ways. And get rid of this. So in an individual's chart, Pluto often experiences a sense of crisis. Something very important is happening. There's such a challenge in our life that we feel threatened that we're going to lose something, and very often there is a loss, because overall Pluto deals with death on some level, a loss on some level, and eventually a rebirth, a healing, a reformation, hopefully. So, the key words for Pluto is death and rebirth, potential threat of loss, a sense of crisis. And on the broader scale of things, when you look at things, socially, Pluto usually is related in some fashion to the power structures in a particular society or in the world. And usually they have a negative energy where there's some degree of oppression or suppression or abuse going on, or revelation of abuse. And there's power plays happening, and power plays have been going on for thousands of years. And right now, there is some degree of revelation in our world of these degrees of power plays, whether it's, if you look at the Jeffrey Epstein thing and, the blackmail that was probably going on in that regard, or, the extreme bias that we see in both sides of, the political spectrum in our media, and the propaganda that comes out from that. Those are power plays, okay? So oppression, suppression, abuse, distortion, some sort of degree of tyranny. If you want to go back to, our Constitution, that's much of what our founders were worried about, is a resumption of tyranny, of, excessive power being wielded against the people. And that's why they wanted to have a balance of power in our government and so forth. So we're running into that right now, where we're realizing the degree of power, the imbalance of wealth, and so forth. And here, it's affecting Mercury, which also has a wide spectrum of symbols, but it's kind of like the mental state of the country. And if you think people are if you're one of those like me, you think everyone's going a little crazy, well, then you can attribute it. This is the astrology is a reflection of that. It's also related to the media and the things I just mentioned about the media and how, the fake news business, and how we're being forced to discriminate on our own. In addition, Mercury deals with the transfer of information, the business transaction, trade, and I'm hesitant to say it deals with transmissions of other things. And I think, the whole threat of a pandemic that we have right now is the spread or transmission of something deadly, which Pluto just symbolically, easily represents. So we have, that threat going on, which I think is actually pretty real. And a lot of people, there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to the coronavirus, whether, how much it is, how, contagious it is, how really threatening it is, and so forth. But I think we'll know a lot within the next few weeks. These quarantines of these, what do they call them? Cruise ships. Okay. There's those, we have they're very good, going to be key examples of how contagious this virus is. And what's going on in China is it really seems like they're doing their best in a very heavy-handed way to combat this thing. But I would recommend that people do take some precautions and, stock up on items that you use all the time. It wouldn't hurt to have extra. You're going to use them later anyway. But this symbol in astrology could mean a lot of things related to, the media, related to business, stocks, trading, world trade, but it also could represent this potential pandemic, and from the astrology, this is going to be with us for a while, and so it's something to take seriously. Okay, let's move on because I wanted to look at China's chart. Now, China, I use in its natal chart, this is the progress chart inside China. I use the 5-degree Aquarius ascendant in the natal China chart. Okay, and in that, you see, you got to kind of imagine what I'm talking about here, but in that chart, we do have Saturn kind of approaching the ascendant, and it'll definitely be crossing the ascendant next year. But when it comes to understanding the current time period, you look at transits, like we just did with the US chart, and you also look at secondary progressions or other forms of progressions, or what are called declinations. Okay, you can forget, that sounds complicated, just forget it, because this is another form of looking at what's going on now for a person, a country, or whatever. And we have definitely some major things going on now for China in their secondary progress chart. And I'm just going to point them out. The progressed moon, which takes 28 years to go around in the progress chart, is fast approaching Pluto in the progress chart. Oh, in fact, within the next week or 2 weeks, it'll be conjunct Pluto. And so over the next several weeks, very serious crisis obviously is going on there, and it's reflected in the secondary in a sense of crisis is going, panic, all that stuff is just spelled out clearly with this aspect. In addition, in the progressed, they have Saturn. They have Saturn squaring their sun, 90 degrees from their sun. And interestingly enough, that this one is going to last a little longer, okay, than this one over here. So it at least suggests an ongoing issue on top of the, I mentioned Saturn is transiting their natal ascendant next year. So a recession of some form a severe slowdown economically, a serious, challenge to their whole country as in, their identity and health of their country is going to continue on, because this transit in the secondary progressions is going to continue into next year as well, because the sun only moves 1 degree a year in secondary progressions, and then next year it'll be perfectly exact. So, I see the crisis, occurring in both the U.S. chart, in China's chart, and, there's only so much we can do as individuals, but there are some things that we can do to maintain our health, to, basic stuff, wash your hands more times a day and so forth, and, stock up on a little bit more on your laundry detergent or whatever, and put a little bit extra in your freezer. It wouldn't hurt. You'll have those things. You'll use those things at a later date if it all turns out to be more benign than we thought. So finally, I know this is a long podcast for me, but I've been listening to this fellow, Chris Martenson, for many years discuss the financial world and his recommendations. And he's an excellent educator in this area when it comes to economics. But his background is actually a PhD in pathology, I believe, biological pathology. And so he started doing podcasts through, if you can do YouTube, Chris Martenson, peakprosperity.com. And his podcasts were, noticeably more concerning about the coronavirus. And this guy has the background to, to examine the issue very critically in an educated manner. And so, he's definitely warning people to be prepared, and he's thinking that this could be, a real pandemic. But what happened to Chris Martenson is they've tried to shut him down. The major tech companies that run YouTube and Wikipedia and so forth. In particular, see, this is an article from his site, but I learned of what happened to him through Zero Hedge is that on his Wikipedia page, they essentially deleted him. And this is a person who has a PhD in pathology, who's published in his younger days. He published articles in Nature, a major scientific journal, on subjects in that area. So this guy, he has the background to know what he's talking about, but this threat of shaking up the confidence, the central banks are combating that possibility as well, and even the media is trying to, I think, basically downplay the issue. So it helps to be aware that there is this level of manipulation going on in our world. So anyway, I think this has been a long one. I think that's all I have for today. Again, my name is Stephen. I have a background in art and psychology. I've been studying astrology for 45 years, applying it to the financial markets for a good long while. I do recommend having at least a significant portion of your portfolio in hard money or cryptocurrencies. If you are interested in, I do consultations in this area. You can reach me at you can reach me at where can you reach me at astroindicator at gmail.com. And I do accept Bitcoin donations, and it seems like I'm forgetting to say something here, but I think that's it for today. I don't do these that often, normally about every 2 weeks, because I'm giving you dates way ahead of time, and that seems like a reasonable period of time to update everything. But because it's somewhat irregular, if you want to be notified of my podcasts, consider subscribing, consider liking my work, and so forth. But that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.